So I'm a clinician. I started out as a clinician, and then I also became a researcher. But at Mount Sinai, I've been treating rescue and recovery workers who worked at Ground Zero and the landfill, et cetera, so WTC responders, since 2007. So I have a lot of experience talking to responders and helping them, trying to help with the things that the symptoms they're having and the experiences that they've gone through. And also my research focus, as Evelyn, Dr. Bromett mentioned, is on resilience, on trauma and risk and resilience. And so we have a program at Mount Sinai, based at Mount Sinai, myself, and in collaboration with other researchers at Mount Sinai, and also my colleagues at Yale, Robert Pietrzak and Steve Southwick, that started thanks to the funding from NIOSH a few years ago. And we started out trying to understand, looking at trajectories over time from PTSD symptom questionnaires that were collected at the monitoring program at the 5 different clinical centers of excellence. And periodically from responders coming for monitoring. And we noticed, like other groups of researchers, that some people had a more resilient or lower symptom trajectory or had bounced back, and other people had worsening or more chronic trajectories. And so then what we decided to do was apply for funding to NIOSH to look at what might be potentially protective factors as well. So we fielded a web-based survey to over 4,000 responders completed a survey over the internet. And then we built up on that by obtaining funding to conduct a study of blood biomarkers, to bring in a subgroup of over 350 responders to do more in-depth interviews and look at blood markers, including genetics, epigenetics that Dr. Klauston was talking about, and then also moving into trying to get the whole picture with brain imaging and also intervention, trying to see if we can help improve PTSD symptoms in responders. So there isn't enough time to talk about everything that we're doing in the program, but what I wanted to mention a couple of things. In our web-based survey and our trajectory studies, we confirmed findings from other groups that those who are having persistent and more severe post-traumatic stress symptoms like nightmares, memories, re-experiencing, tended to have more severe exposures, so they were more directly exposed to the attacks. Either they were there when they happened, or they worked on the pile directly, or they might have colleagues or family members who were lost in the attacks. And also subsequent stressful life events like losing a job or losing a family member or separation seem to build up and make the trauma more difficult to cope with. And also having medical problems, as you know, we heard that mental health and physical problems, it's all one body, brain is in the body as well, go together, so that also compounds. And then from the web-based survey, one other thing I wanted to mention is that one thing when we brought the responders, between 350 and 400 responders who came in person, and we also looked at blood biomarkers, we found that childhood trauma, so more stressful childhood environments like abuse or neglect, compounds the experience of World Trade Center exposure together with some forms of genetic predisposition. For example, a protein, a gene that makes a protein in the blood that helps the stress, the hormones, stress hormones, and the stress response in the body. So there seems to be a particular interaction between severity of childhood trauma, World Trade Center exposure, and certain gene variants in the body that makes it more difficult for some people because they're at higher risk for PTSD, and then other people who have been lower exposed to trauma and also have the more protective genes are more likely to be resilient. So it's very complex, and it takes a lot of time to study, and our colleagues in Stony Brook are also studying genetics, gene expression, epigenetics. So we will have, in the next few years, I anticipate we're going to have a lot of interesting and informative findings. In terms of coping strategies that we also asked on the web-based survey, what are the 3 most common coping strategies that you've been using to cope with 9/11 related problems that you've encountered? And so we found, similarly to other populations who were exposed to severe traumas, that avoiding or not dealing with problems is not as helpful, although if you're very symptomatic, sometimes that's what happens. We found that accepting or being able to gradually coming to terms with having illnesses or the losses that came from 9/11 is important, and also trying to find a positive angle, trying to grow, if at all possible, from the events. For example, you found new friendships with other survivors or responders, or perhaps if you've been able to overcome some of the stress, you can share it with others or start a group or join a group to help others who are still struggling. So trying to positively reframe. And then we also found that, and similarly, taking action. So instead of passively resigning oneself, to take action to deal with the problem, like getting help, getting medical care, going to monitoring, for example. And we also found, like in other survivors, other studies of trauma survivors, that a social support network is associated with better mental health, and also being able to regain a sense of purpose in life. Those who had lower symptom levels over time were more likely to report that they had a better sense of purpose. Now, this particular study, we can't say what's cause and effect. We just know that it goes together. And so, so some people need to, of course, access mental health treatment and even, counseling, medication in order to be able to get to that point. And finally, I briefly wanted to mention, right now we're fortunate to be funded by NIOSH to conduct a study of online writing therapy. This one is for responders, very broadly defined: police, firefighters, construction workers, Red Cross volunteers, a whole range of responders. And there are flyers outside, and the best way to find out about the study is to log into our webpage, because that's how you enter the first steps of the study to be evaluated. And it's for responders who are still having significant PTSD symptoms. From our survey, we found, of the 4,000 who completed the survey, we found that about a third of responders out there are still suffering from clinically significant PTSD symptoms. Perhaps not everyone full PTSD, but symptoms that are associated with impairment in their functioning at work or relationships, like distancing themselves from others, or still having sleep problems, still being really disturbed by memories, or when they are exposed to reminders of 9/11 and their work for the World Trade Center recovery. And so what we do is we pair them up. We first do an assessment online and over the phone, and I see that the light is red, so I'll take half a minute. 5 seconds. So we assign them with a therapist, and they have writing exercises twice a week for 11 writing exercises over 6 weeks. And we're comparing 2 forms of therapy, one that incorporates their experience of 9/11 and coping, and the other one focuses on current stressors and problem solving. So anyways, there's a whole program of study that hopefully we'll have some more findings for you in the next few years. Thank you.